Okay, in this video, we're going to factor quadratic trinomials, okay, where the leading coefficient is not 1, all right? So you can see in problem 1, it's going to be 3. In problem 2, down here, it's 4. In problem 3, it's 4, and so on, okay? I'm going to do example 1 with you, and then I'm going to do example 3 with you, okay? So we're going to use the AC method, all right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to label, we understand standard form, hopefully by now. A is 3, B is negative 16, C is 5, okay? So using the AC method, I want to know what is A times C. In this case, it's 15. And I want to use that 15, and I want to come up with all the factors that give me 15. And I'm going to choose the pair that adds to give me the B term, which in this case is negative 16, okay? So what two numbers multiply to be 15? And there's only 4 pairs here, all right? So 1 times 15. And negative 1 times negative 15, 3 times 5, and then negative 3 times negative 5, okay? So my question to you is, which pair of factors combine to be negative 16, all right? Well, first thing I know is the two positive pairs, the two pairs that have both positive values, can't combine to be negative 16, so I can eliminate those right away. And real quickly, you can see that negative 1 and negative 15 are going to be that pair that combines to be negative 16. So we're going to use those two values when we rewrite our trinomial, okay? So we want to rewrite. We're going to break negative 16x into parts using these two values, negative 1 and negative 15, all right? So we're going to rewrite it as 3x squared minus 1x minus 15x plus 5. Now, realize this is equivalent to the problem we started with, okay? Negative 1x and negative 15x combined to negative 16x. Okay, so we haven't changed anything about this other than what it looks like. All right, so we want to factor by grouping. Okay, so in some cases you might not have ever factored by grouping before, so this is going to be a good place to figure it out. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to group these first two terms together and put those in parentheses. And we're going to factor out a greatest common factor. We're going to group the last two values, okay, negative 15x and 5. We're going to group them together, and we're going to factor those by taking out a greatest common factor. Okay, so let's do that. All right, so first thing, we're going to break this down. These two have an x in common, so I'm going to divide out the x. What's left when I divide out that x is 3x minus 1, okay? With the second group here, negative 15x and positive 5 are both divisible by negative 5. Okay, and what that leaves is 3x minus 1. Now, when you factor by grouping, this has to occur. These have to be the same, okay? If they're not the same, then you can't factor this expression by grouping, okay? If you get different, if you got 3x minus 1 here and 3x plus 1 here, those would be different, and you couldn't factor that expression using grouping, okay? So what I want to do now is I'm going to take out a GCF again. So this expression and this expression have a greatest common factor that I've underlined here, 3x minus 1. So I'm going to take that 3x minus 1 out. Well, what's left, when I divide this thing by 3x minus 1, there's an x left over that goes there. When I divide out 3x minus 1 from here, there's a negative 5 left over, so x minus 5. So that's going to be my answer. That's the complete factorization for 3x squared minus 16x plus 5. Now, as always, you want to check your work, okay? So, 3x minus 1 times x minus 5. We want to use the FOIL method, if you call it that, or distributive property, whatever you want to call it, okay? So 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times negative 5 is negative 15x. Negative 1 times x is negative x. And negative 1 times negative 5 is positive 5, okay? Usually, we're going to be able to combine these terms in the middle. I can do that here, and when I do, I get 3x squared minus 16x plus 5. Well, that's what I started with, so that tells me my answer here is correct, okay? All right, go ahead and try problem 3 now. Pause the video, and then come back and check your work. All right, so let's check your work here. As always, we want to start out with labeling what the values for A, B, and C are. In this case, A is 4, B is negative 4, C is negative 15. We want to multiply A times C, and we get negative 60. Now, unlucky for us here, negative 60 has a lot of different pairs of factors, okay? So when we think about what two numbers can multiply to be negative 60, there's a bunch of those, okay? There's actually 12 different pairs that can multiply to be negative 60. All right, so take a look at those real quick. Remember, we want to think about which pair of factors combines to be negative 4, okay? Well, when you're adding signed numbers and you want to get a negative, well, the bigger number has to be negative. So that means I can eliminate all those pairs. I don't even have to check those, okay? So when I look down this grouping here, the first group that adds to be negative 4, the only group that adds to be negative 4 is going to be 6 and negative 10. All right, so 6 plus negative 10 is negative 4. So we're going to rewrite this negative 4x using these coefficients, positive 6 and negative 10. All right, so let's rewrite. So 4x squared stays the same. Negative 4x we're going to rewrite as positive 6x minus 10x, and you can see that this is equivalent to this. And then we've got negative 15 next, okay? So now we're going to factor by grouping. We're going to group the first two terms together and factor out a GCF. Then we're going to group the last two terms together and factor those using a GCF, okay? So when we factor these, okay, first thing, 4x squared and 6x have a 2x in common. And when we divide out that 2x, we're left with 2x plus 3, okay? Negative 10x and negative 15. We want to take out a negative 5 because we need what's inside parentheses to match 2x plus 3. So I need to take out a negative 5. If you took out a positive 5, you'd get different expressions here, and we don't want to do that, okay? So when we take out a negative 5 here, we're left with 2x plus 3, and that's great because remember, these binomials have to match. If they don't match, then you've made a mistake, okay? So we've got an expression here, we've got an expression here. They have that 2x plus 3 in common. So I'm going to divide out the 2x plus 3, and what's left over is this 2x and this minus 5, so that's going to be my second binomial. So the factorization of 4x squared minus 4x minus 15 appears for now to be 2x plus 3, 2x minus 5, okay? Let's double check our work. So we're going to use FOIL method or distributive property, whatever you want to call it. When I do that, 2x and 2x gives me 4x squared. 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x. 3 times 2x is 6x. And 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Okay? Let's combine like terms in the middle there. We get 4x squared minus 4x minus 15. And remember, that was the problem we started with. So then our answer is correct, okay? So the complete factorization of 4x squared minus 4x minus 15 is 2x plus 3 times 2x minus 5, okay? And that's how you factor quadratic trinomials with a leading coefficient that is not 1.